Welcome to the third installment in our series, The Comeback, Sports in a Worldwide Pandemic. Today's program is on facility and event operations. I hope you were able to join us for our earlier programs on the business of sports and facility development and redevelopment. We have put together a great lineup today, so it should be another interesting and informative discussion. Before we start that discussion, though, I'm just going to turn it over to my fellow co-chair of our sports and entertainment group, John Israel, who has an exciting new resource from our group that he's going to highlight for you. John?
Thank you, Kevin. I want to just welcome everybody. Thanks for attending. And as Kevin mentioned, I am a co-chair of Foley and Lardner Sports and Entertainment Group, a multidisciplinary team of attorneys with a broad and deep experience in sports and in the sports and entertainment industry, with several of us having spent time in-house counsel at various sports organizations. We like to say, as outside lawyers, we bring a unique insider's perspective to the work we do for clients in this space, and we are excited about this series, The Comeback. It was only a year ago at this time that we were under a virtual lockdown and all leagues had shut down or suspended their then current seasons, and we're unsure about the prospects of resuming at all. Much has happened since then, from the completion of the NBA and NHL seasons in a bubble to the Texas Rangers filling, Globe Life Field to the capacity for MLB's opening day last month. So today, I guess we're now months into the comeback, and last month our focus was on future facility development and redevelopment in sports and entertainment, with an eye on the impact of the pandemic and COVID-related considerations. Today is a bit of a companion piece focused on facility operations and the pandemic-related issues teams and facility operators are confronting as fans return to stadiums and arenas. It's an exciting and interesting time that I think breeds a bit of cautious optimism as vaccinations take hold across the country and as the relevant COVID concern numbers decrease. So it seems do the restrictions on gatherings in public. And with that, more and more people are being allowed back into stadiums and arenas, and they appear to be grabbing the opportunity to do so. As for the Foley Sports and Entertainment Group, we have been watching these developments very closely. And in the process, we decided to put together what we call in shorthand the tracker, which Kevin referenced and we published early last week. Its full title is Nationwide COVID Regulation Tracker, Roadmap to Restart for Sports and Entertainment Venues in the U.S. It's a compendium of COVID-related rules and regulations impacting the opening and operation of stadiums and arenas across the country, including for every jurisdiction where an MLB, NFL, NBA, NHL, or MLS team is located. Specifically, it provides state, city, team-specific information on venue capacity limits, ticketing policies, screening procedures, and other safety and mitigation requirements, and includes direct links to relevant state and city regulations and to the rules established by the local teams. You can find the tracker at foley.com. I think we're putting up a link here in the chat today, so you can access it directly from the chat. We are updating this tracker regularly. It's organized by state, and things are happening so fast that since we published last week, I think we've made, as of today, 20 updates to 27 to the 27 states that are actually covered in there. So in a week, it's pretty amazing. We're actually tracking the tracker now. We've included a summary page that shows which states have been updated over ongoing 2-week period. So we're going to be actively doing that and updating, and we hope you'll have a look at the tracker and we'll find it to be a useful resource. But let's get on with the program and hear from our incredible lineup of guests that we have who are dealing firsthand with the opening of venues during the comeback. And for that, I'm pleased to turn the program over to our master of ceremonies, who is live at Polar Park in Worcester, Massachusetts, Rick Horo. sports media personality who's authored various books, including the Sports Business Handbook, Insights from 100+ Leaders Who Shaped 50 Years in the Industry, and several other books. So Rick, over to you in Polar Park.
John Israel, that was fantastic. You called me a co-host once. Now I'm the master of ceremonies. I'm not sure if that's a promotion or demotion. I do appreciate it. We're building a brand. It couldn't be any better. We'll talk about it in a minute, the post-COVID comeback. We've got the greatest guests in the world to analyze this from Polar Park, Larry Lucchino. We've got my friend, Peter Luco, who's opening the home of the Kraken, Climate Pledge Arena, this next fall, and the home of the Islanders. Simultaneously, it'll be a busy summer. We have Al Guido, who opened up what is the most used outdoor stadium in the past century, including Super Bowl 50, Levi Stadium in San Francisco. We've got Amy Latimer, who has run TD Garden and personally responsible for the Bruins and Celtics positives over time. How's that? We got a lot of positive energy today, but before we let you go, John, the tracker is an incredible device because it is unique. Everybody wants it. You're updating it daily. You didn't expect that, but you realize that every time somebody changes a regulation relative to accessibility and capacity and COVID distancing, CDC, then local, county, state, you will amend it. I'd recommend self-serving, though, recommend it as a tool that everybody ought to have. Just for a couple of seconds, give us your perception on what you've found generally as you did the research for the tracker.
Well, look, I would say overall, you'll find that the regulations that are out there are a reflection of COVID in America. There's a complete lack of uniformity in government rules that I think mostly matches the political stratification around COVID in the US. But what we have seen is that unevenness has been mostly leveled by the leagues themselves. Have clearly established a set of uniform safety standards and protocols that we see fill the void where there is, no regulation. But I would say I'd applaud the leagues and teams for what they're doing. In many jurisdictions, they're required to submit detailed safety and mitigation plans in order to get government approvals to open their venues. And no doubt that's been a lot of work in the process. And at the same time, they're really selling into a new market of sorts. I think what you might call the COVID diverse consumer base, because on one end of the spectrum, you got folks that may not consider COVID a threat and are ready to come back without restrictions and other things. And on the other end, you've got people who are very concerned about COVID and the virus being in the environment. So from that's a general perspective, but I think, referencing the fact that we're seeing an increase in capacity limits over the last month and changing every day. Teams and venues, I think, are still hamstrung in many ways by the social distancing requirements that just keep the numbers down. They just can't reach those higher limits because of the distancing requirements. The numbers just don't work. And what we've seen is that it's really pushed teams to be very creative in their approaches to try to get more people in, vaccinated only sections with reduced social distancing requirements, that help create greater capacity limits. We've seen things like on-site vaccinations, discounts, tickets, free giveaways for people who are vaccinated. And, on the other side of that coin, proof of vaccination, it has run into some political headwinds, and, maybe that's a battleground going forward. And of course, the indoor sports teams have it tougher just because of the indoor facilities and the smaller capacities. So, but I think maybe look for a serious push over the next couple months as the playoffs arrive in the NBA and NHL to get that capacity up. So I foresee lots of tracker updating, on this front.
Appreciate it. And obviously your perspectives are very important. Everybody listening, everybody watching, I would commend you go to the Foley website and find the tracker. It is available and useful, not only for everybody in minor league baseball, all major league sports and every government entity as well. There's nobody else that's doing it, so I would commend it. Before we get into our guests and Peter, just give you some notions and some starting perspective about the dimensions of the comeback. In March, when we started this, remember, it was kind of the 1-year anniversary of a complete stop. By July, 35% of the $1.3 trillion business of sports was wiped out. The government estimates about a $16 trillion total economic loss across all spectrums, including sports. And we talked about 3 quick things that were, if it was possible, positives from the pandemic. Number 1, creativity born out of necessity. Number 2, natural selection, basically survival of the fittest, the strong survive now. And number 3, best practices, we're all in it together. Well, we said that in March, a year after March, and this number 3 of our comeback series, it all validates. Let me quickly just go over some perceptions and keep in mind as we go through our guests. First, on the micro level, the long-term recovery clearly in sight. International Association of Event Hosts, for example, said 76% of all of these international organizations are planning fans to be substantially or completely back by the end of the summer, and only 17% are thinking there's going to be any disruption in 2022. Maybe overly optimistic, but it is what it is, as people say. Number 2, the vaccines are now tied to the entry and seating issues, as John alluded to. In New York, beginning of May 19, 2 weeks from now, we have Citi Field and Yankee Stadium vaccinated sections where, to the extent anybody would want to be, and I'm not sure you want to be socially or not, close to other New Yorkers, you can be there because you have proof of vaccination. The English debate over COVID passport, the whole idea is, well, it is going to have some opportunity to prove if you've been vaccinated, you get special seating. That's continuing. Number 3, the global marketing of vaccines in the workplace and acceptance. The NFL Vax Live concert gives you a good example, and the 50 Super Bowl tickets, hard for the NFL to do, as Al knows, donated to the cause of vaccinations. The Reds and 13 other Major League Baseball teams are doing the same kind of marketing effort and discounts off of them if you've been vaccinated. And just very quickly, that's the micro level. On the macro level, facilities are being done, long-term regional economic post-coronavirus recovery efforts. And as we said before, just like Yankee Stadium in the 20s after the Spanish flu, and just like the Orange Bowl in the 30s with WPA, you've got facilities opening. Polar Park, we'll talk with Larry about that and give you a tour, by the way, later on in this program. Peter will talk about climate change in Seattle and Belmont in Long Island, all about the economics. And listen, for the infrastructure interstate system, as President Biden continues to talk about dollars, $6 economic gain for every dollar spent. My question would be, why shouldn't that be applied to other kinds of infrastructure, including public gathering facilities? Well, that's what the debate may be about in the future. Next, unprecedented industry entrepreneurialism and creativity to regain some of the lost COVID revenue. 475 million new esports fans. Caesars buying William Hill in the US, $4 billion, and putting facilities in arenas and stadiums. We know that. The new intangible tokens the Warriors just did, cryptocurrency, the Heat naming deal, all about entrepreneurialism. And then finally, because I will let Peter speak about his issues, the industry rebounding like never before and the great comeback continuing. Forbes talks about the average franchise value today at $3.4 billion. That's up 11% per average sports franchise. That's even after the pandemic. And if you need any further testimonial from the private sector, Apple has a $430 billion investment in the US, 20,000 new jobs, Apple TV across 20 states. What's driving it? Sports. So as we get into installment 3 of many more installments, it is very clear the comeback continues, and we will talk about all of those dimensions of the comeback right now. Peter Luco, co-chairman of Oakview Arena Alliance, one of the developers of the Climate Pledge Arena for the Kraken, which is now a real live $650 million NHL franchise, UBS Arena in Long Island, president and CEO of Comcast Spectacor in his early days, the Flyers, executive chairman of the Florida Panthers, now in the playoffs, by the way, congratulations, and obviously diverse entrepreneurial entertainment maven and guru. How was that for an intro?
Yeah, it's great. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, hey, Peter, listen, and I understand you gotta clear out pretty quickly, and I apologize, but you know, your history gives us some perspective on all of the business, the bio I just mentioned. What are some of the common principles you've learned from all of your various disciplines?
Well, it comes down to teamwork and building a great team and empowering people. I worked for Ed Snyder for many years, and one of his favorite sayings was, hire good people, let them do their jobs. I think as I was able to grow companies and fortunate to do that, I found as a leader, you've got to understand that these your employees don't work for you, you work for them, and you've got to be there to support them and help them succeed and give credit where credit is due and have fun, make money and have fun. That's really what it's all about.
So you make money and have fun, but yet you are revolutionizing the facility development industry. I'm not sure we've ever had a situation where one human being is so responsible for two huge arenas on two ends of the country, the new arena, the Climate Pledge Arena, talk about that, and then also talk about the UBS Arena, both of them opening up within, a couple of weeks of each other next October?
Yes. First of all, when you start with Seattle, we have two forces of nature in the Lewicki brothers, Tim and Todd, and it's going to be incredibly successful. What was really interesting about that project is that we were keeping the historical roof of the Key Arena and literally had to get in under that roof and then tear the old arena out, like every single part of that with the exception of the roof, and then dig down another 20 feet to expand the footprint for hockey. So it was quite an engineering feat, and it's really going to be a very special building. I mean, Seattle has not had adequate facilities for many years, and the arena itself is going to fit right into the neighborhood, and it's really special. And then in Belmont, as we know, Nassau Coliseum became an outdated facility in itself, and the ability to build the arena at Belmont Park, which is well over 300 acres, is the second largest open landmass to Central Park in New York Metro. So we're in Long Island, but our parking is Queens. So we're very accessible from the city and obviously to the island. And I also want to add on this call are two of our partners, Amy Latimer, Delaware North will be doing the food service. And then Al's group at Elevate is selling the premium in Belmont, and they've just done it, in this pandemic, their ability to sell the premium has just been outstanding. So a lot of credit goes to a lot of people for what we're doing.
Well, teamwork and partnership, clearly. Let's talk about government role. You read some of the articles recently about the $1.05 billion cost of Climate Pledge, and then the $25 million for the parking garage. But it touts the significant private investment that the Kraken makes, that Lewicki's, obviously Oakview. But we're in a day and age now where we're talking about public infrastructure assistance around North America as a stimulus post-coronavirus related enhancement. So what's your take? And I'm not talking about ratio of exactly how much money should be private versus public. What's your general notion about the role of the public sector and infrastructure dollars in this process?
Well, both Seattle and Belmont are being built 100% privately. The land was contributed publicly. But I think in today's world, it isn't popular now to spend millions and millions of dollars on these facilities. We have to find a way to privately get it done. I think that the public contribution that I think would be well warranted is building that infrastructure and getting utilities to the site, providing land, and any really, frankly, permitting support or other governmental support that we can get to get the facility built and built in a timely fashion.
Yeah, and the quid pro quo to that is if there's government assistance around it, especially infrastructure, the community benefits, the community good of these facilities ought to be also the kind of catalyst that's generated in surrounding neighborhoods. Larry will talk about downtown Worcester, and I can personally attest to what's happening here, and he will. But how does this fit the long-term development first in Seattle and then at Belmont?
Well, we can already begin to see, certainly in Seattle, revitalizing the district and being something new and a catalyst for further development. At Belmont Park, Scott Malkin, the owner of the Islanders, is actually building some approximately 400,000 square feet of retail adjacent to the arena. And then in long-term, NYRA, New York Racing Association, is planning on doing a renovation of Belmont Park. So it's really going to be a great catalyst for that area. And then the surrounding communities of Elmont and Floral Park will see that benefit in terms of traffic for, their restaurants and retail, but also obviously a lot of employment. As we all know, whether Amy's down there in the North End, I was in South Philly. It's the neighborhoods who really come to work as in the facilities and really makes it cool and makes it a real community center.
Your whole world is not just arena development, obviously, and hockey, but it's the whole concert touring business. You're co-chairman of the Oakview Arena Alliance. Are you chairman or just co-chairman?
I don't know what I am, but it's and Amy is actually in the alliance. But really, we all work together to increase bookings. Obviously, with Irving being a founder of our company, Irving Azoff, being the most powerful manager in the business, and then us working with Live Nation in a lot of areas, we're able to bring a lot of content. Now, in sports, and it's been painful from the budget standpoint, but at least, we were able to open up and play, and the concert business just stopped because you just can't make it work at 25 or 50% or even 75%. So we're basically stopped some small shows, but they don't really make any money. What we're really going to see, which is going to be really exciting, is a huge pent up demand for concerts and for acts to tour. As you know, there's no such thing as a record deal anymore. So really the only way that an artist can make any money is to tour. So we're going to see that pent up demand from the consumer, but also from the acts themselves. And what's really interesting is when we shut down in that March, and all these shows were canceled, postponed, whatever, only 15% of the consumers have asked for a refund. So 85% of that money is still in, which shows you how much people love live entertainment. So now these shows are going to reschedule, and there'll still be plenty of fresh money out there for the tours that want to get started and move on. So it's going to be unbelievable. The 40 city tours are going to be 60. The 60 are going to be 80. It's going to be really good coming out of this. And then we can put all this behind us.
All right. Well, and so in the minute we have left for you before you have to do your thing, what is the extent of the rebound generally of the concert business, the sports business, and maybe the question for you is, where are we a year from now is simple, so forget that. Where are we 4 or 5 years from now? Concert touring, special events, arena capacity, the whole snapshot of the industry.
I think this pandemic is going to have a long-term effect in that people are just going to want to be entertained. We're going to put it behind us. The last pandemic led to the Roaring 20s, which is really interesting. And I know we're going to see that again. Amy's folks have told me in baseball how much, their per caps have just gone up tremendously as baseball opened back up. I know we're going to see that in the concerts. I was talking to Ralph Marquetta out in Phoenix, and he said his per caps have been off the roof. So people are just going to want to be entertained and spend. So I don't think it's a year. I think it's 5, 10 years. I really do. I think people are just going to want to get out, communicate, and just have a good time.
Well, you're absolutely right. We were stealing thunder a little bit, right? So the Spanish flu in 1819 led to Yankee Stadium and all the development and the Roaring '20s. So here's to the Roaring '20s, just the 2020s, not the 1920s. And Peter Luco has a tremendous hand in making sure it all happens. So Peter, thank you for your input and your energy, and we'll catch you down the road. Really appreciate it.
Thanks everybody.
Awesome. Our next victim, as my mentor would say, he's stepping over here in a minute. Words can't describe Larry Lucchino, but I'm gonna try anyway. Okay, and the reason I'm gonna try is because Michael Wall from Foley is gonna join me over here. So this is the Sport Business Handbook. We've all seen it. So Larry's. I'm not even going to do Larry's bio because we need to have other time for other stuff. But he's philanthropically involved with the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, which is probably the first thing I wanted to say. He's only the person who's revolutionized the facility development industry. Camden Yards, then Petco Park, then Fenway, and as if he didn't have enough to do, he, with the Red Sox, played a giant game of chicken between Rhode Island and Massachusetts, and now Massachusetts has won, and the result is that. And he was the one who masterminded Bob Cousy to be one of the opening thrower-outers with Louis Tiant, Pedro Martinez, and also James Taylor singing the national anthem yesterday. In addition to being a good friend and somebody I'll look up to, that's the best introduction I could give.
Thank you, Rick. That's very more than generous.
Thank you, Larry.
I was a Cousy. He was an idol of mine when I was a kid as a basketball player, so it was special to have him here yesterday. And he's been in Worcester for 75 years, so he has a certain credibility when he says nothing has happened in the last 75 years that's as exciting and as potentially important to this community. He knows of what he speaks.
Well, and we'll talk about some of the other facilities in a minute. But how about that? That's not the sports page. That is the Worcester Telegram and Gazette front page. And before we get into the questions, it's hard to describe what a ballpark like this means to a community like this. They haven't had affiliated minor league baseball in what, 100 years?
95.
All right, close to that. And you notice the pride around here. You know, you're the reason. I mean, there's a team of people around. Of course. But you know, to snapshot that for us.
Yeah, well, it's Worcester has proven to be a great partner in this venture. Now, understand they were on the upward track in terms of revitalization of Worcester even before we came, and in part we came for that reason. This was a city on the move, very different. While it's the second largest city in all of New England, it was a city as well that was on the move, that was redeveloping, that was bringing new assets to the community, and that was growing in leaps and bounds. And so we thought that was a great new home. The fact that they had a tremendous baseball history and heritage, as well as a keen appetite to see all of Worcester developed, made them a perfect partner for us as we were looking for a new home to replace the 78-year-old ballpark that we had in Rhode Island in McCoy.
And when you think about it, just real quick as a follow-up, the $60 million from the state, obviously infrastructure again.
Yep.
The city credit facility, which was important for financing. You guys did it on the backs of yourselves, the risk you take. But it's I don't know if it's the way you want to describe it, but it's the most expensive minor league facility, $157 million.
Well, I would quibble with that. I would quibble with that because I do think that the newspaper had 157 in at one point, and then you looked inside the story and it said 118. 118 is closer to the comparable number to other ballparks because that's ballpark construction cost, and I think that's the number that we go with. Now, whether that's more expensive than Las Vegas is anybody's guess, but this certainly is a major league quality ballpark built to minor league capacity specifications. Excuse me.
And we're not clearly wanting to focus on the expense. We want to talk about the benefits, and the benefits of this is got to be multiples of the initial investment, and we're beginning to see that downtown Worcester and all the collateral property around it.
Oh yeah, the development is a big deal. I know it's almost a cliche to say a public-private partnership, but this is a meaningful public-private partnership that's going to generate substantial public benefit in terms of state of status, amusement, but also in terms of tax dollars flowing from additional investment. I think the city envisions this ballpark paying for itself over the course of time because of increased tax revenues, and I think it's going to be a win-win proposition. San Diego was in many ways the best win-win proposition we had, which was that we would have a successful home for the baseball team, but also a catalyst for downtown development in the East Village, as so it was called, of San Diego. We projected timidly $500 million of private investment. And the last time I looked, it was closer to $7 billion in private investment around the ballpark in San Diego. So it is proven to be a win-win proposition for the city and for the team. And I think in this case, we're looking for 4 wins. We're looking for a win for the Worcester Red Sox, to be sure, a stable and secure financial future in a brand new ballpark. We're looking for a win for the city, and I think we're going to ensure that with the planned development, not to say anything about the unplanned development that's coming in full force. The third win is for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, because while they didn't invest in the ballpark, and they did invest in the infrastructure and parking around the ballpark. And we got some great leadership between the state and the city in the course of developing that. And the fourth win, if I may be so presumptuous, will be for the Boston Red Sox, because having a home like this, 50 minutes from Fenway Park, is a great competitive advantage, and one that the Red Sox have had for some time. Although it's about the same distance from Pawtucket to Fenway Park, but this is going to be a important development cog for the Boston Red Sox. It will enable them to develop the kind of rich, robust farm system that a baseball team needs to succeed year in and year out.
You traded the green monster and left for the blue monster and right, however.
Yeah, Jenna Marie and I made that decision because there was an issue. A lot of people wanted a replica of Fenway Park here, 50 minutes away. We didn't. We wondered what the site allowed for and suggested on its own organically. And we needed a wall in right field here. We didn't need a wall in left field, given the site that we have. And so we went from the Fenway colors and to the Camden Yards green to Woo Blue, as we call it. All the colors of this ballpark are blue. And that's unique, well, relatively unique, if that can be, if that's a phrase. And it is something that I think distinguishes it and creates a warmth and a nestled in feeling at the ballpark that I think will be important to people. This sense of intimacy is something we've always striven for.
Hear, hear, and you succeeded in that. After Amy and after Al, we're going to have a few more questions, but Larry's going to do a 5-minute cameo with the camera panning. And he's going to take us on a tour of soup to nuts and some developmental secrets he did at Polar Park, as we say, Polar Park. Michael Wall is a partner in the Boston office of Foley. He's got a few questions for Larry.
Yeah, well, thank you. Larry, it is impossible to overstate how great a contribution this is to this neighborhood. Because when I drove up here for the first time, I mean, I was here for the groundbreaking. But when I drove up here for the first time, it felt like this park was here forever.
Yeah.
It was like stitched into the.
Well, we made a promise right at the beginning that it would look and taste and feel and smell like Worcester. That has sort of been our mantra in other places. You can't just make create a ballpark. You've got to learn what the culture and local history is and what reflects that town and make it fit in. I mean, red brick architecture and the way we design Camden Yards fit in perfectly in a town like Baltimore. But San Diego, an outdoor Southern California leisure town, we had open concourses and flowers and bougainvillea. And I think it's something that is essential to every ballpark.
You mentioned the mantra and what's unique. Now, obviously, the Camden Yards and Petco Park and Fenway Park and Polo Park, they're all unique in many ways. But what would you say are the enduring characteristics of these parks that they have in common?
Yeah, I would say that they are first baseball only facilities. No, strike the word only. They are baseball primary facilities, and they will. I'm sorry, I never turned this thing.
Season ticket holder. By the way, it opened up yesterday, and here's somebody who wants 10 tickets for a month.
No, we'll take it later. The question, Michael, was what's the characteristic? One is the intimacy of the ballpark. We have half as much foul territory here as we had in Pawtucket. So going from 37 feet to about 18 feet is really what we have here. And we have very high netting and almost transparent netting to protect people too. So consequently, you have a lot of protection and safety, and yet you have a ballpark up as close as possible to the field. And I think the seating that occurs as a result of that is quite special. So I think that is a baseball only facility, or baseball first facility, because we intend to have concerts and football games and other things here. But this place was built for baseball and designed for baseball in a baseball town, and it will be baseball primarily, but it will also have other uses year round that will also add to the charm and culture of the city.
And just one follow-up, you mentioned intimacy. I mean, obviously this is an intimate ballpark with social distancing resulting from the pandemic. Do you see the pandemic as having a positive, negative, neutral impact?
It certainly had a negative impact thus far. The loss of the 2020 minor league season was very hurtful. And the shortened 2021 season is also what we're in the middle of. But the fact that we're nearing the edge of the pandemic, as Rick said earlier, the 1920s may be an illustration of what pent-up demand can do for a society or a community. And we have certainly a lot of pent-up demand built up. So the short-term reaction to the end of the pandemic, whenever that comes, and it's not here yet, will be positive. I think we saw little glimpses of that yesterday in terms of the joy and intensity of the fan base. But certainly long-term, it's been much more difficult to build this ballpark during the pandemic, much more expensive during the pandemic, and much more uncertain during the pandemic. There were times when we were this close to saying, it can't be done. Let's just forget about it until after the pandemic. But we needed a ballpark, and we wanted to stay. Was determined to stick to the date that it's told the public.
One of Larry's enduring characteristics is tenacity, and this puts it to the test as well. One of the comments that we had talked about before, Foley's interest in kind of the template relative to the tracker, but also the 120 minor league teams that are left after the reconfiguration by Major League Baseball. Do you have any messages for any, and there are a lot of minor league folks that are out there listening to this today?
Yeah, the jury is still out, I think, and whether this is a good thing or a bad thing. For 116 years, the National Association existed, and we had a separate minor league system. Now we have a minor league system that is part of the major league system. You know, there are a lot of good and talented people at Major League Baseball, and having them working with us to expand minor league baseball and at every classification, and making it a smoother, more efficient, more sustainable development machine is a positive thing. But whether Bob Dupay is the head of baseball for a long time with Commissioner Seelig, will know that there's a risk in that too. The size of the the old cliche, we're from the federal government, we're here to help you. They're from Central Baseball, they're here to help us. Usually they are, and sometimes they do, and we'll have to wait and see if this works. I'm optimistic that it will be a good thing for us.
Oh, good. And let me just conclude with one question for Larry, because you may not remember it, but it stuck with me. You wrote it in your chapter in the book that the lesson for me is to be bold, take risks, step out of your comfort zone. You spoke about that related to your presidency of the Baltimore Orioles in 1988 when you were 28 years old, which was incredible. But it can also apply to the broad notion of every other facility you developed in your life. So just comment on that.
Well, I mean, boldness is a good piece of advice to give to anyone who goes into a new opportunity, whether it be business or baseball or politics or whatever. Being bold is an important part of the job, I think, for most of us. But also not being deferential to a point to baseball traditions and history and background is also important. But you've got to be willing to try some new things, to do some new things, to effectuate change, to make the game even better than it has been. It can't, if you're not busy being born, you're busy dying. I think Bob, that was
Bob Marley?
No, not Bob Marley. Come on, Paul Zimmerman, the guy whose real name was Zimmerman.
Bob Dylan.
Bob Dylan.
I knew it was Bob.
Dylan.
They both can sing though.
Said that years ago, yeah. But and I think that's true for baseball. We need to be busy being born, and I think that Rob Manfred and the people who occupy pivotal positions in Major League Baseball recognize that.
Larry really appreciated it. If Bob Marley were building stadiums, he would have said that too. Very important. Will you promise to come back in a few minutes after Amy and after Al, and we're going to do a virtual tour of this facility?
Can I listen to Amy? I've always admired Amy. I listen to Amy.
Yeah.
I learn things every time I see Amy.
I would appreciate that. Amy, we promised an audience of X. We've now got an audience of X+1. And Amy is incredibly interesting. Obviously, her perspective. The advisor, the chairman of the advisory committee of the Federal Reserve Boston. I wanted to get it right because that's as important as far as monetary policy as the chair of TD Gardens, that position she's held since 2012. She oversaw the $70 million floor to ceiling renovation of the garden in 2015, and not to be outdone, the $100 million renovation in 19 and 20, 500,000 square foot expansion. If you look at what the building is doing, the World Figure Skating Championship a couple of years ago, the Frozen Four, the Summer Slam, the Labor Cup, the East Regional, and oh, by the way, the Celtics and the Bruins. And probably most important, she went to URI on a full basketball scholarship. So do not play Amy Latimer in horse. How are you?
I'm great, thank you, and not easy to follow Larry and Peter, two legends in the industry. But thanks for having me today.
Well, absolutely, and Amy, it's important. You don't need to give us an elevator speech of TD Garden and Delaware North and all of your vertically integrated entities, but just talk about how important the vision has been to not only perpetuate your core business, but preserving uniqueness and quality at the same time.
Yeah, so it's a balance, right? So you have these elements that you need to always consider, right? For us, it's the guest journey, and you're thinking about culinary and technology and our people. And what's interesting, not just for us at the TD Garden, but I think also the business we do across the industry is, what's important to the owners and operators of the facilities, and what's important to the fans, right? And I think with this pandemic, we had a pause. We have been on this wheel. I feel like I've been on a wheel for how many years, and we got a chance to reevaluate that and sort of look at what's our new priorities and how do we source that and figure that out. So I still think, we all have these basic core elements, but as Peter mentioned earlier, like we're doing some work certainly with OVG, sustainability and in Seattle was critical right? And you have to look at that. At Belmont, my gosh, you can't, if you got to get the food right in Belmont, if you get the pizza wrong in Belmont, we're done, right? So I think that it's important that we understand, and Larry said it, the culture and the expectations for the fans, and deliver on that.
Let's compound that question. And by the way, this has been my show, but this is your house. So anytime you want to ask questions, obviously, that'd be fine. You know, we'll take the next step on what you're doing. Fans have effectively been away for the better part of a year plus. How do you continue to ensure that fans not only come back, but come back happy, come back safe, and come back consistent with an overall experience that's going to keep them coming back?
Sure. So we were the first large venue to open in Massachusetts, which was certainly important that we got it right for then, you know, the Red Sox and the Patriots, and certainly for Larry. And so I think one is coordination with the state, the city, and the leagues, right? Because everyone wants to know that you have a plan. And we actually did a survey, and people wanted to know that if the state and city signed off on our plan, they had you know, confidence. That consumer confidence also has to be with the communication, because everybody's at a different level, right? Some people just want us to open doors and come in and they were ready. And some people were apprehensive and they wanted to understand, like, you know, what were the protocols? And, you know, we had people sign up and show that they, and our fan promise, you know, that they hadn't been exposed or had any symptoms, all the way to, you know, what was concessions going to be like. And, you know, so that communication and making sure that people understood it, and making sure we had extra people there to talk about it as people came in, I think was critical. And now you start to see it starting to pick up, because a lot of things were similar to grocery stores and restaurants, but they hadn't been with that many people. We opened at 12%. Nobody had been with 2,000 people for a year, right? So, you know, you really had to get it right and get those protocols right.
So, and this is, you know, Larry has this in common, Peter, who did, Al obviously does. Can you anticipate, you mentioned a little bit about being around other people for the first time. What do you think fans are expecting when they come back? Staggered in, full capacity, getting there? Have they forgotten what the rules of their sport are like? Are they ready to guzzle a few more beers? What are the pro forma implications, and what are kind of the behavioral implications?
Yeah, so they have not forgotten about their sport, right? I think they, you know, it's interesting. I always felt like we battled the couch and their own refrigerator, and now I think they can't get away from their couch and the refrigerator quick enough, right? And come back in. I think that's part of the per cap story. But you know what they expect is that, you know, what they've experienced in other places, right? They're socially distanced, and you know, you have to wear your mask, and it's incremental. And I think certainly the early adopters came in, and now as the increases are starting to rise, that we're getting more and more people. And we just went to 25% on Monday for the last Bruins game and for the Celtics game on Tuesday. And not surprised, people were back, they're ready, and they're listening and they're paying attention, right? Because they know they want to be there and they have to pay attention to the rules.
So cover the waterfront. Obviously, Delaware North and you guys, concessions, food service, ticketing, marketing, television rights. You're a full service entity, and is that where the world is going? All of you, all in a different context, have been managing different pieces of that overall interrelated business. Has the pandemic made it more imperative that you vertically integrate, or do you focus on one thing you do best? It's an important question for you, I think.
Yeah, listen, first of all, I think all of us want to control all the aspects of our business, right? And if you're not doing it directly, that you're partnering with somebody that's aligned, because you know, that guest experience, and they come in, the guest doesn't, you know, it's the team brand, right? That's what they don't always know all the pieces that are going behind it. So either way, the team is what's reflective in this. I do think people probably in that pause got a chance to reprioritize and understand where the opportunities were to drive their business and relook at that a little bit. So I think I'll be curious to see, probably not as much in 21, but probably in 22, how people address their business and what things they might look at a little bit different, to set themselves up for the future. I know for us.
I'm sorry.
It's been fun to, yeah, no, just the last thing is that I also think it's been sort of, interesting to sort of test and learn some of these experiences like technology. Who knew that it was going to be the year of the QR code, right? Everybody knows how to use a QR code. Mobile ordering. We are a mobile first environment, right? Mobile ticketing, mobile parking, mobile payment, mobile roster cards. So those are some of the other things I'd say from a fan thing that I hope stay, right? And continue.
Do you know about QR codes?
I'm sorry.
Do you know about QR codes? I mean, she said everybody knows about
We
QR
do have,
codes.
we do have them in our home plate seats and our.
Yeah, but
dugout
your
seats.
guys say they do. I'm just wondering if you know.
I know that they asked me about putting them in, and I said, if you think I should go in, put them in.
There's a good answer. So I got one other question for you. And
Sure.
it's actually, you're a Rhode Island person, right? You went to Rhode Island.
I'm not from Rhode Island originally. I'm from Maryland.
Oh, all right. But when you were URI, did you have it? Is there any issue or affinity or concerns from any of your friends who live in Rhode Island that he took the minor league baseball team and moved it to Massachusetts? Are there any issues about that?
Oh, I'm not touching that one.
You can touch it. I think there are a couple of issues.
I would say
there's some hurt feelings, to be sure, but that's a
Yeah.
good thing. We were there for 50 years. And the biggest difference between Pawtucket and Worcester is, and I should say all of Rhode Island and Worcester, is that they showed us that they really wanted us here. And that's pretty central. You're going to start with that base. I mean, they get 3,000 people for a American Legion game here in Worcester. So it's a great baseball town. And we wanted to stay in Rhode Island. Believe me, we tried very hard for several years to stay in Rhode Island. And we succeeded in persuading the governor it was a good idea, and persuading the Senate, and the Senate president was a good idea. It was just the Speaker of the House, who was early on a supporter of ours, became an adversary at the 11th hour and would not approve the deal that had been approved by the two other branches of government. So we were given our marching orders, and we read them and took them.
Yeah, and I this is inherent in the world of facility development since the Parthenon and the Acropolis. Al, I mean, we'll get to Al in a minute, but you're dealing with the stadium, not you, thankfully, but in the East Bay and the A's and what they do and how they deal with it. And I know, Amy, years ago, the Celtics were flirting with Salem, New Hampshire, and there's always a discussion about the grass is always greener. The world is littered with coulda, shoulda, woulda, with cities that have to spend twice as much to get the team back after they've left. So we all get that. And Amy, I'd love to ask you about monetary policy, but you don't know. I mean, we don't know. And so let's not even talk about it. Really appreciate it, Amy. Thank you for being with us. Thanks again.
And we're thrilled to have Larry back in Massachusetts. He has done a fantastic job, and he did it. It wasn't a woulda, shoulda. He did it.
Thank you, Amy.
Thanks.
Thanks again. You're going to listen to Al, right? I mean, he's been
Sure,
waiting.
absolutely.
Al's been patiently waiting quietly for us, and it would be rude right now if Larry Lucchino got up and left before this. Al Guido is the CEO of Elevate Sports Ventures, who is also the COO of the Niners during the building of Levi's Stadium. It's all interrelated anyway. And I remember Super Bowl 50, which was the golden Super Bowl for a lot of reasons with the NFL. Levi's, as I said earlier, has had more major, I think I got this right, outdoor events than any outdoor stadium this century. He was involved with Comcast Spectacor. Peter was around the same world. He ran the Lakewood Blue Claws, a Philadelphia Eagles fan. I appreciate that. A lot of people probably don't, but that's another issue. And, most important, I guess, you were a wide receiver at the College of New Jersey. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Proud.
Why did you go pro?
I'm a poor man's Wes Welker, a very poor man's Wes Welker. So that means I'm never going to step foot on an NFL football field except in a suit, which is what I step foot in it now.
Yeah, not bad. Al, you've had an illustrious career, and your facility is incredible. It really, Levi's Stadium, revolutionized the event and facility industry in Northern California. Talk about the operation and development of that facility from your perspective.
Sure. So we opened in 2014. It's a 2 million square foot facility built on really 3 pillars: technology, sustainability, and fan experience. And I think we can all say that. Probably resonates a little bit different in the Bay Area when you say technology. There's a whole host of companies in there. We felt like we wanted to build a software-driven stadium, not a hardware-driven stadium. There was more money being spent on R&Ds within the technology space to really interact with sport. And so our first job was to fix connectivity in stadia. And it sounds easy. It's not, as we know, these are concrete structures. And I think it really began for us around having significant DAS and Wi-Fi capability. And then we added in the overarching technology stack that the fans really get to experience within their phones. It's been a lot of fun.
It's a lot of fun, but you also revolutionized the industry from a lot of different perspectives. The suites on one side, the whole notion of egress and access in different ways as well, the interactivity, as you said. What are some of the enduring best practices that endure still today going forward?
Well, I do think that the acceleration of technology and how it has impacted sports is probably the enduring piece of Levi's. But maybe I'm controversial in saying this. I'm not sure COVID changed anything. I think it accelerated everything. And we were already seeing that. If you think about content distribution, if you think about category involvement and sponsorship, if you think about additional assets as it relates to, putting names on jerseys or helmet decals on NHL stickers, if you think about technology, shoot, I walked through a ballpark today. Oh, hold on. My apologies.
That's Larry's fans calling you because they've been shut out. They want tickets for you.
I walked through a ballpark today where I don't even show my ticket, right? I don't even go through a security screening checkpoint. And so for me, I think a lot gets made around what did you need to do to change for COVID? And the reality is but once social distancing is gone, the experience will be very similar. All it really did, I think a lot about like the law of diffusion of innovation, right? Innovators, early adopters, early majority, late majority, and laggards. All it did was force everyone to move up a step before they were ready to do so. And so if you think about mobile ticketing and how hard it was, we all just talked about QR codes. Trying to get my father or mother on a Zoom was impossible pre-COVID. Now they do it all day long. And so I personally think that all of that acceleration was coming. Now the question is how do we all backfill our bucket, right? Or fill our bucket that is pretty large, that hole. We're doing it with new assets. We're doing it with new categories. Rick, you mentioned it: gambling, NFT, cryptocurrencies, media distribution. All of these things are happening. I personally think it's probably the most exciting time to be in the world of sports and entertainment. 2022 will be the largest content year any of us have ever seen in our lifetime. Every known artist, I like to play a little guitar. I might go on tour. You'll never buy a ticket for me, but I promise you everybody and their mother is going to go on tour. And the return of live is real. What I think got lost in all of this was it was so easy to sit on your couch or do whatever and watch a game. It's harder to do that because I've been in an empty stadium with no noise. Well, white noise, I called it. It's miserable. None of us ever want to go do that again. I probably took for granted walking into stadiums and ballparks and arenas, right? I think the reality is we probably all may have if we were in the sports world. Now, I can't wait to bring my daughters back. I can't wait to have a beer with my father back. When something is taken away from you, you start to realize how much you miss it and how much you loved it. And so I personally think that return to live, when those fans come back in, I don't think it's a quote unquote, it's a rapid ascension, but I think it's here to stay.
Spring from that question, it impacts, Larry and Amy, everybody else here too. When people come back because they're excited about what's been taken away from them for the last year and a half, how do you sustain that momentum? Will the capacity numbers, and I'm not talking about COVID-related increases in capacity restrictions, will the couch require football stadiums to be down to 50 from 60, baseball stadiums to 30 from 40? Do people return back to normal pre-COVID behavior? What's your prediction?
Oh, I think people will return to normal pre-COVID behavior personally. Now, not in every segment, right? There is a reality of consumer health confidence that there's some people will not be prepared to sit in whatever it is, you name it, a facility directly next to someone else right away. That might take some time. I think ultimately it definitely happens. And as it relates to facility design and management, ballparks have shrunk over time, stadiums may have shrunk over time, right? But that doesn't have a lot to do with the couch per se. That has more to do with the acceleration of secondary market and how I can buy a ticket today, right? In the sense that not only can I watch it on my couch, but I'm in New York right now. I could show up in New York. Now, if this was 2019, and I could go to a Yankee game and never have a season ticket. I just open up my phone, buy a ticket, and go. And so I think we're all trying to figure out who those new buyers are and how if you look at all sport, there could be an argument that you can make that a percentage of season ticket holder base has declined over years. Now, fandom has not, it's grown, right? Gate receipts have grown, but the distribution of your gate receipts is changed dramatically. And I think that will continue. And so our jobs, I think about it, Amy said it well, as facility operators are, the hero feature still got to be the hero feature. So the product on the field or the diamond or the ice or the court has to be good. On top of that, the overall fan arching experience needs to be what I at least, the bottom line is what I at least get at home. And I think getting back to Levi's is, when you were in a stadium and you could not text your friend, or you could not figure out whether a guy got 2 feet in bounds, or you couldn't figure out whether the guy's knee was down when he fumbled, but everybody at home could, that's not a good experience. I should get as good, if not better, from a technological perspective, on top of the sights, smells, sounds, food, right? Beer. That is what makes live great, but it can't be great without those other pieces.
I'm just looking at Larry. Have you spent time with Al before?
No, I haven't.
I'll tell you what,
I like him already.
That is magnificent. The only issue is I'm a Dolphin fan, so I don't want to be anywhere near a Niners guy, okay? I'm sorry. Montana killed us. Everybody else killed us. But, we'll be able to talk soon.
I would like to speak it longer, like maybe we should talk.
Yeah, you see, there you go. We made a friend. We made a business.
I'm happy to have a beer with you in your ballpark, sir. I enjoy it,
Yeah, well, listen, you all have a lot in common because you're all entrepreneurs and you all appeal to the fan first, second, third, fourth, and fifth, and then everything else comes after that. One quick question for you finally, and then Larry's going to take us on a tour. 5 years from now, vertical integration, we've asked it of everybody. Media, your world as president, but also elevate its sales, its media, its design, its infrastructure. The challenges are big challenges, but where is the business broadly defined 5 years from now?
I think vertical integration is absolutely necessary. It depends on what sport you ask. I personally think the sophistication of our businesses, I used to joke that sports teams were billion-dollar lemonade stands. It's a bad joke, I know. But I think the sophistication in data capture, understanding our fans, what experience we drive, how we monetize our assets will be very, very important. And I think from a facility perspective, you will continue to see the boom of mixed-use developments, ancillary spaces around how gambling gets rolled out across the quote-unquote 50 states will completely evolve. And so I would take a look out on that, which is how do folks build these privately financed buildings in a way that captures not just the venue opportunity, but the ancillary development opportunity around those venues.
Al, that was incredible. I will give you Larry Lucchino's cell number and make the introduction. I know he wants to talk to you. I can see how excited he is here just listening to you. And I really appreciate your time. Thanks very much. That was great.
Thank you much.
Bob Dupay, I want to unmute you for a sec. Can we unmute Bob Dupay? Is that a possibility? Are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, good. So Larry had a chance to, see that you were there. He's going to take us on a tour of the facility for a second. But what was it like working with Larry, and what was it like working with Bob?
Well, Bob was a very aggressive and smart and strategic lawyer for baseball, and no issue that was too big or too small for Bob to exert his influence over. And I think baseball profited very well from Bob Dupay, and I certainly did, in the sense that our ownership group was successful in buying the Boston Red Sox in 2001, in part because of the information and cooperation that the league provided to us. And it did all the prospective purchasers. We were lucky because we had a working history with those people, and that made the transaction even easier. So thank you, Bob, belatedly.
No, thank you, Larry. All the things Rick said about you are accurate. I mean, you were a visionary. What you did in Baltimore was just phenomenal in terms of the growth of the downtown. What you did, Petco, and the numbers you cited today were staggering. What you've done here with Polar Park, what you did with the Red Sox, all phenomenal, and clearly one of the leaders of the game for your entire career. And it was a pleasure to work with all of you. And I don't blame any of you for sicking the Massachusetts Attorney General on us after the sale took place either. Your point about just to follow up for 1 second about the minor leagues. The minor leagues are one of the great elements of baseball's success. To have 40 million fans in 160 cities year after year, family entertainment, affordable family entertainment, come to ballparks like yours. And when a player will end up with the Red Sox or maybe with some other major league team, you'll follow that player's career for his entire career. And it's what drives playoff ratings. It's what drives game of the week ratings, because people are interested, much like when somebody graduates from Holy Cross and ends up in the NBA, everybody in Worcester will be a fan of that player and that team for his entire career. Same thing with the minor league. So I couldn't agree more about how important the vertical integration, how important the minor leagues are to the success of baseball.
I once heard from a sports commentator that he said we lived in the toy department of life, and I thought it was kind of clever, and I used it until I talked to a psychologist at Johns Hopkins when I was with the Orioles, and he said he heard me use that phrase, the toy department of life, and he took offense, and he said, you don't realize the impact that sports can have on a culture, on a community, on a city, and a very positive, uplifting way when they win, of course. And he said, I don't want to ever hear you talk about the toy department of life. Sports is more than that. It's an important business, and it's an important cultural asset to a community. And the teams that don't understand that are missing something.
And just Bob, yeah.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. No, I was going to say, everyone remembers when her grandmother or grandfather took her to her first sporting event. No one remembers going to their first civic center. It really does make a difference. It brings communities together. There's no question.
Yeah. And that's well put. And from the other perspective, I was just going to mention anecdotally, staying at a brand new Marriott in the middle of downtown Worcester last night, and the general manager came up to me and said, I know you're affiliated with this, you have a credential, and we wouldn't have been here if it wasn't for the plans to do Polar Park and otherwise, which has a great dimension that's always hard to quantify, but nevertheless very important. In that context, we're in for a treat if it works, and don't blame me if it doesn't. Our executive producer extraordinaire, Matt Levin, is going to take the camera and take our tour guide, Larry Lucchino, outside for 5 minutes, and we'll talk about what the building looks like from beginning to end. And by the way, I'll reserve the right for some closing comments. I got 2 messages during this whole presentation. One was you're slouching, and the other was your phone is ringing too loud. So shut up, we're gone. Go out.
Okay, we're going to go outside and show you. I should say first that you won't get a great sense of it from this camera shot, but you'll get some sense of it. And we invite you all to come here this year. Amy, it's easy for you in Boston, but we invite everyone from all over the country to come here because we want people to see that the minor leagues can lead the way in important ways and can offer some suggestions that might be helpful to you. And secondly, we want you to get to know Worcester. one of the bargains we have with the city of Worcester is we would actively and creatively promote it, and that is important to us. So come out and you'll see two things primarily. You'll see one that will be the green grass, of course, but the green grass is surrounded by what we call Worcester blue, woo blue, woo blue all around. The seats are all blue. We have a blue monster in right field out there with some ads and a scoreboard on, and our capacity is 9508, 508 being the area code for Worcester. We wanted to have a number that people could remember, and what you'll see are seats as close to the field as I think you'll see anywhere, and that is pretty important. We have a great major league kind of scoreboard in left field. Matt, if you can show them that.
Yeah.
But we're still very much a work in progress. The berm and the left field building and all of that yet to be done. And so I would think by the end of this COVID experience, we should have, and by the end of this season, I hope we will have this ballpark 100% completed. Right now, it's about 90% done. So I hope you all like it. I hope you'll see that. Home plate, we have a lot of technological advantages here. You can have waiter and waitress service at your seats, and we have a lot of major league features and elements to it. But it does have the key phrase that Bob Dupay used earlier: affordable family entertainment. You can get a ticket here for as little as $8 or $9, and I think it's going to be a focal point for Worcester going forward and a point of local pride, to be sure.
How about the heart-shaped lights, Larry?
Yes, the lights in center field. Dr. Charles Steinberg, who's president of the the Woo Sox, is decided we should have heart-shaped lights in the ballpark because Worcester is the heart of New England and the heart of the Commonwealth, and there are hearts on every street corner in this town. So come on out and see for yourself. Thank you.
That was totally awesome. We could do it right here. I don't know if Bob, do you have any final comments? I would just say on behalf of Larry, who was roped into what he thought was 20 minutes and it turned out to be over an hour. And we're going to do this, every 2 or 3 days?
Oh, yeah, we can't wait to see you again.
In reality, this is a classic case of a visionary inspiring, along with people who you've heard from the past hour, just like Peter is doing in Seattle and in Long Island, just like Amy's doing in Boston, just like Al is doing in the Bay Area. Foley and Lardner, very happy to have you be involved in this. Get the tracker. Stay in touch. Next month, we'll have some media orientation and increasing asset value. Bob will talk about that in a minute. But Larry and I are signing off. We're going to go plan.
Believe it or not, I can't say goodbye to Rick Carl.
Wow.
Yeah. Goodbye, Rick. I'll see you later. Good luck.
I'll see you in an hour. All right.
Just very, very, very quickly, I want to thank all of you for attending. I really want to thank all the participants. I mean, the comments of all of them, Amy, Al, you make me, in the tour of the park, you make me want to get back to a live game sooner rather than later. And I couldn't agree more with your comments about the in-stadium experience. It's what made Jerry Jones, people criticized the board when he first built it, but it was doing exactly what you were talking about, and that was bringing the home experience to the stadium and giving the people in the stadium the same experience. It was great to see fans at the Wells Fargo golf event in Charlotte last week, shoulder to shoulder behind the 18th green. It was great to see the crowds at the NFL draft. And all of you and your enthusiasm and your knowledge and your expertise make me very optimistic for the future. So again, thank you all. I welcome you all to come back next month, where we are going to talk about building your brand and preserving your brand in the era of COVID, and talk a little bit about media. And with that, I will again thank you and wish you all a good day.